Yeah, you are welcome back. We're counting down to Lansdowne Road, Ireland versus England. Ireland hoping to win the first ever Lansdowne Road Grand Slam. It doesn't get much better than that. Katie Fitzhenry and Devin Toner, 2 Six Nations winners in the house. Both apparently have good tickets for the game. You say you're working at the game, Dev. I'm not sure about that now.
Yeah, I'm working. So obviously the firm I'm working with now thankfully has a box. So I'm going to be entertaining clients for the day.
What are you up to nowadays?
I'm working for a financial planning firm called, it was seen on Instagram, Ask Paul.
Okay.
And Fairstone Asset Management. So kind of working in the corporate world now, trying to help people with their money.
Katie, where are you going to watch it?
From a stadium.
Yeah.
Not quite the tickets that Dev here has, but I'll take them. Tickets are tickets.
Well, there's only one place to start, and that's Gonzaga. I know, Dev, you never won schools, but Gonzaga, congratulations. Totally against the odds, and I can mention my mate Simon Corcoran, who soldiered hard for Gonzaga and tells me that nobody expected them to win yesterday. Texted a mate of mine, ex-Gonzaga, what was it like going to Gonzaga when they didn't win? Well, they took their time winning, in fairness. 70 years, all those long walks home from Donnybrook to Ballsbridge as a youth, always on the end of a hiding from Andrews or Michaels or Clongowes or Turrenure or Blackrock, my brother's school, or defined terrace chant of "We'll beat you in the leaving cert" was our only comeback. So what would that be like if you're a Gonzaga's kid waking up this morning?
It's huge. It's huge for them. It's huge for the school. It's obviously to win it against Blackrock is huge. To not have one of them, is it the first time they won it, or not have won it in 70 years? Yeah, it's absolutely massive, especially for all the young lads as well, and like first year, second year, third year. It's great for them to be able to see the success. So like that could like breed a bit more success as well. So it's great that it's been shared around a bit.
How come you never won one actually?
Because we weren't very good. I won one cup game when I was in 5th year against high school, and then lost.
High school of Rathgar.
Yeah, and then we lost Turrenure, and then in 6th year I lost to Rossgrey in the first round.
Yeah, in fairness, the school situation has changed to the extent that it's I don't know if you're following them much, Katie, but it's much more spread out now. Like rugby has really spread around. Like so, the traditional heartlands obviously are still strong, but you have the likes of Gonzaga, Rossgrey coming up as well, and you can tell the rugby is like kind of been spreading around the schools.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that competition is really strong. A good pathway for the boys to come into, and done some really good work for setting up into academy systems. So yeah.
Yeah, Brent Pope is he's such kind of a hero of the nation. He can just show up kind of 2 minutes into our and you missed my little anecdote from an ex-Gonzaga. Yeah, Brent Pope is here. He says, now here we are. This is my Gonzaga mate. 2023, playing liquid rugby, winning the bloody thing. Unimaginable. The collar size of the partners at Good Bodies is going to increase in 10 years' time. There are consequences. So Gonzaga are on top.
Well, a quick story there, a bit of trivia. When did St Mary's either beat Gonzaga? About 98 points to 85.
Wow.
Basketball.
Wow.
I looked up on a match the other day wanting to see St Mary's play Gonzaga, and it was college basketball in the States.
Oh, right.
Wow.
So that's a bit of trivia for you. When we throw out questions, so sorry.
How long are you living in Ireland now?
Oh, God. And I came over in 1990, so 33 years.
Did you ever think you'd get to a situation where Ireland would be such overwhelming favourites to beat England to the extent that literally nobody expects England to win? Ireland are 10-1 on. They're expected to batter them. How have we come to this, Brent?
Well, my pitch now is that I left the best rugby country in the world to come to the best rugby country in the world. But it's taken a long time. I've seen changes since really rugby turned professional, because I think Ireland were brought kicking and screaming into the professional game. They didn't think they had the structure on board. The first thing the IFU did, they need a lot of credit for bringing the top players back. Players like Malcolm O'Kelly, Victor Costello at that time, brought them back from England, wrapped them in cotton wool so they got a few more seasons out of them. And it's gone on from then. So we've had success with coaches, starting with Joe Schmidt before Eddie O'Sullivan, Dick and Kidney played their roles. And then, of course, now moving on to the situation now where you're clearly the best team in the world. I just don't mean by a little bit. The way that they're playing. Yeah, I think I never saw. It's like that movie I Hear Dead People or something. I always thought this would be a Grand Slam year for Ireland. I don't think any different today.
Well, if Ireland played in a hypothetical, Ireland played New Zealand in Paris. If
Could
Ireland
be the
played New
World Cup.
Zealand in Paris tomorrow, for example,
Yep.
how do you call it?
Ireland.
Like confidently.
Yep.
Katie?
Confidently. Yeah.
Yeah, Ireland.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Well, after that, I went out to, I got the ribbing of, I was told to F off back to Ireland by a couple of ex-All Blacks I played with, because when I was out there, I predicted they would win 3 Test section. If you look back in those games, New Zealand were lucky to win the first one. Such was the domination of the Irish for 20 or 30 minutes. A couple of intercept tries, things didn't go Ireland's way. So they could have won that series out there 3-0. The danger with New Zealand, of course, is they uncover, just watching it, I don't know whether you follow the Super Rugby, I follow it every week, but they are unearthing a few talent players in a World Cup year. My worry still would be a World Cup quarter-final against what looks to be either France or New Zealand. And you wouldn't want to meet a French team in the sort of vein of form they had against England, nor would you want to meet a New Zealand team that's smarting from being beaten by Ireland more times than not over the recent years. But I still see Ireland as, with their structures and their depth, as being, the number one. And you look, the under-20s are probably going to win a Grand Slam tomorrow.
Yeah,
The
no
sevens,
pressure on them as well, but obviously there is.
Well, the sevens, qualified for the Olympics and could have actually got a medal if things had gone their way. Women's rugby is on the up and up. So, I mean, it's not just coming from the first team for a few golden years. It's coming from the provinces. You could conceivably, when I say you, Ireland could conceivably win a European Cup, a World Cup and a Grand Slam all in the same season. Wow.
This week's Saturday panel is brought to you thanks to Carry Out, Ireland's largest independent off licence, with over 100 stores nationwide and voted Ireland's number 1 off licence in 2022. Now delivering nationwide. Visit carryout.ie for more. What intrigues me, Katie, is the soul searching in English rugby today, where not only do they reflect on the humiliation of the defeat to France, the fact that they're coming to Lansdowne Road and St. Patrick's weekend trying to almost upset the party as sort of a good thing, but also knowing how key English men are to this renaissance in Irish rugby. And I guess that's what nearly hurts the most in some respects.
Yeah, look, we know England are going to come today hurting and angry. It's what Ireland can do, and if they can play their own game, then I don't think there's a question in the result. I think England have a lot of questions probably to answer themselves over the next couple of months pre-World Cup, to see if they can get into some sort of shape to be competitive in that World Cup. I don't doubt them that they will be, but it's going to take a lot from what we've seen over the last couple of weeks.
Like, generally, I know in football, say like when Bournemouth shipped 9 against Liverpool, Bournemouth then didn't concede goals for the near future. Kerry shipped 9 against Galway United the other week and were much better last night. So I guess you do react to an absolute hiding like this. Have you any sort of recollection in your own career where you're absolutely battling, like, we can't, at least let's keep it tight the next day?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've all been in that position at some stage, haven't we? I think there's a bit of pride, and I think that's where the English will come out. It's a Grand Slam for Ireland that they want to stop. It's Patrick's weekend. There's so much there that they'll really lift their spirits and really go hard for it today. Whether they have it in them or not is the next question, but I think there's a lot of pride at stake of whether they're good enough to be in that English shirt, I think.
It's funny enough that I was talking about like all the great stuff in the paper this morning, but I found myself half reading English content about England's situation as opposed to Ireland's, because we all know Ireland have done great things to get to here. What's going on with English rugby at the moment? How long do we have?
How long do we have? I don't really have many
box later on.
Either,
Yeah.
but, you know,
from your perspective, why has it gotten to this?
The last couple of months has just been very disorganised, obviously, with the Eddie Jones going as well and Borthwick coming in. So it's obviously hard for Borthwick coming in and trying to win straight away. You know what I mean? It's hard for any coach coming in. Like the first time Joe started coaching, he lost the first couple of games. When he came to Leinster, he lost the first few games for Leinster as well. And for any coach, it's hard kind of bedding your ideas in. And it's just that disorganisation in a World Cup year is. It's kind of baffling that they got rid of Eddie, you know. So it's.
Were you surprised at that?
Yeah, absolutely, especially in a World Cup year, you know.
But what the thing of the World Cup is, like, we get over the Six Nations, get through our problems, then and arrive in France and be ready.
Well, I'd say like they're obviously going to hope to be, but like I think in regards to the game, like I kind of get a little bit uneasy when people say we're going to hammer them and we're going to thump them. Like I'm passing English lads in the street saying, "Oh, are you going to thrash us today? Are you?" And like everyone expects us to win, where I feel a little bit uneasy about it. Like I obviously think Ireland will win, and everyone thinks they will, but I think there's nothing that they would like more than to rain our parade and stop the Grand Slam. Do you know what I mean? It's
But is that not the one thing about? I'd say put this to you, Brent. Is this not the one thing about Andy Farrell's team? They just never give you the impression that they're going to be overly phased by whether the fact they're 20-point favourites or they're 20-point underdogs, and the adversity that they came through in Edinburgh as well.
Look, the worry is that it's a 2019 all over again. You've got the guts of the English backline that won on that day. Tuolangi back in, Slade, Farrell. So yes, they can do it. That's honest. Anybody who's been involved in high level sport, there's always upsets and there's always a situation 2 teams take the field. Anything can happen on a day. That's what worries me a bit, and I think Dev's right. I mean, you don't want to take this English team at their peril. But I just don't think they're in the same place as... I think this Irish team has moved on from the Joe Schmidt era. I think Farrell has done a fantastic job of just sort of reining in those few areas that we were worried about a few years ago.
What were they?
Well, there was probably a strength and depth as a problem. I mean, I think we can all say that in 2019, when they were ranked the number 1 side in the world at this stage as well, I think there were a few problem areas, that we needed to get sorted in backup. Not having a strong 15, but having a strong 23. You just saw last week against Scotland, Keane Healy coming on, that's been talked about, Josh van der Veer throwing. Like, a team shouldn't win an international match against a team that everybody thought was a banana skin when you've got so many players out of position. Caelan Doris comes off the field. Jack Conan has a fantastic game. They've all bought into the way that Farrell wants them to play, and there's great team spirit. He's brought that as well. I mean, the criticism of Joe was Joe could be a bit strict in the sense of letting the players have their head. I don't see this with the new lot. I just see that there's camaraderie within the team. There's great team spirit. So I'd be very surprised. I mean, there's always room for upset. Yes, we know that. Even looking at Cheltenham, if you're a betting man, but I don't see England being... And I think England's problems stem from their club game, actually. Because I don't even think they know the way that there's no identity with this English team. How do they play it? One week they're saying they're bringing Marcus Smith to play a running type of game. Then the following week it's Farrell to play a kicking game. Now the conditions will help them. It's raining out there. The conditions will help.
But it was raining last week as well, And obviously they didn't play the kicking game last week, but there were a lot of hand in
But they are capable.
Week.
Farrell has been off form, but he is a world class player on his day. They just don't have the grunt. I just wrote down a list of Dev will talk about the importance of having frontline yard gainers. England have Alice Genge, that's it. Ireland have Ryan, they have the whole back row, they have Sheehan, they have Tyke Farrell. There are 5 or 6 players that can carry the ball up and get over the gain line.
On their day, England have as well, though. Jamie George, Sinclair,
yeah,
Genge,
but Jamie George isn't the player he was a couple of years ago.
Don Brandt, when he plays as well as he can get over lines.
But Don Brandt's been disappointing.
But he's a good player when he. I know,
but
yeah,
a good player in the English system.
Yeah.
But that's the thing when I go back to their club game. Is their club, in your opinion, and both you guys, but is the English club game as strong as we're led to believe? Or is it a game for kind of Friday night's TV? You get these score lines like Bristol beating or losing by 40 or 50 points. Saracens on top of the league, followed by Sale, which has got, I think, 11 or 12 South Africans in their squad. I see the club game as being their Achilles heel in the English team.
What do you think of that?
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think even just from a player point of view, you said so many South Africans or cross-country players in, I think obviously they're needed and there's a reason for them. However, I think we also have to be homegrown and they have to build from the bottom up. So it's pointless having players playing positions that won't play in a Six Nations English shirt for you. So you got to be able to have that backup and depth, and I think that's what Ireland have done really well, where I don't know if England have done the same.
It could click, but I'm asking the panel, when was the last time a Toje had a brilliant game?
What's actually happened with him, Dev?
Jamie George had a brilliant game. If you base that World Cup performance against the All Blacks in 2019, who were their major players on that day? Underhill, Billy Vunipola, Snicker was at that time was carrying ball. Jamie George was carrying ball. Toje was carrying ball. They don't have any ball carriers. I'm waiting for Don Brandt. I like him. I like the style. I like the lines he runs as a number 8, and I think he could be a player talent-wise, a bit like Caelan Doris, but he's just not. He's not delivering. Could they click today? Of course they could. We're hoping they don't, but they could. They could have one of those games where John Brent comes into form. I just don't see them. I don't see them having the grunt. The way that teams took on Ireland years ago, and as Dev will know, as being one of the tallest players in the game. The way that you took on Leinster and the way you took on Ireland was you put up the biggest pack you could against them and you tried to suffocate their ball. Well, you look at the pack that Ireland put out now. Beard comes in 6'6" or whatever. You've got Ryan 6'8" or whatever. You've got all these players. You've got 4 or 5 line-out options. Where's England's line-out option? Toje is not a second row size-wise anymore. He's 6'4", 6'5" at a push.
Like, there's no point in saying he's not a good line-out forward. He's one of the best line-out forwards there is. Do you know what I mean? And I think Ribbons is a good line-out operator as well. But I think our line-out options are better. Pete's one of the best line-out options in the world, hands down.
Who do you select from the English squad and put into your Irish starting? Name one player.
None.
Exactly.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, exactly. That. But yeah, exactly. But I'm hesitant to rule them out.
I want to talk to both of you then about James Ryan, and there was a great moment in the France game where it was late on. I can't remember exactly what Ireland were winning by, but I think we essentially kicked, it was possibly a kick-off. James Ryan was one of the last men at their goal line, basically making a last-ditch tackle. The issues he's had with injuries and HIAs and the tournament he's having is endearing.
Yeah, it's massive. Like, I think just their ultimate work rate for each other is just huge. He has an engine like we've never seen. I think Bard is probably coming up behind him with that as well. But their work rate for each other is just phenomenal. And if they can keep that going, like, he'll be unstoppable.
What is that then?
Just with James, I think one of the most things that I'm most impressed about this Six Nations is his leadership and his decision making. And even last week, so he would have started with Ian Henderson. Ian Henderson would have been calling the lineouts. So then Hendy goes off injured, and then we call him Cheese. So Cheese starts calling the lineouts. But then with everything that's thrown at him as well, with 2 hookers gone, with Josh throwing the ball in, being able to call a lineout in an international Six Nations game with everything on the line, he was able to do it, and he was able to call the right calls when. So like, I was just so impressed with how he handled that.
So I put it to you this way, right? Ireland under Farrell look a team that is almost enjoying life more than it did under Joe Schmidt. But could a Joe Schmidt coach team have been able to almost as seamlessly cope with the adversity that happened in Edinburgh as an Andy Farrell team?
Like, it's a hard question. Like, on the day, yeah, we probably
could have made those sort of splits.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, like back in the day, Seanie O'Brien was a good thrower in the ball as well. Like, so like I would have backed us to do anything, you know. But like, it's hard to hypothesize about it. Like,
like what has Farrell brought that Schmidt didn't have?
God, a lot. Like, their open play attack, I think you just can't tell what they're going to do. They've so many options there, which is fantastic. I think just like, it sounds really silly, and you would hope that a lot of players would anyway, but I actually just think they just love to play the game and love to play for each other. And even just hearing that the family were brought in during that captain's run on Friday.
Well, the photo of Farrell and his grandson, I mean, how of course it made the front of every paper. How would that not bring a smile to your face?
Yeah, I just think he's really brought in a whole community spirit to it, and as I said, like, they're just enjoying playing with each other,
and yet Mike Catt says like they can play an awful lot better in terms of that sort of style or whatever.
Yeah, look, I don't think you'll ever have a perfect game of rugby, but if that's where the bottom line is, what's the top level, and that's quite scary, I think.
And just mentioning Mike Catt, he also spoke this week about the humility of the players, and I don't know these lads at all, but you just get this warm vibe off them that they enjoy playing with each other, playing for their family, playing for their country, playing for their coach and staff.
That just doesn't happen. I think I go a bit further and say about Andy Farrell. I think that he's the template for future coaches, because he's got all the ingredients to be he is a fantastic coach, and that comes from playing the game at the highest level. So he's got the respect of the players. He's been there, done that. A lot of coaches haven't played international rugby. He's a nice guy. I haven't met him. I've met him a couple of times, but he seems a nice guy to have a couple of beers with. So he's brought that whole family atmosphere we're talking about, that camaraderie. He doesn't bag the players in the media. He's always very positive, and he comes from a background that he's learned. Like all good managers, he's learned off Joe Schmidt, because he came in there as a defence coach, which is really important in the modern game. He then learnt the positivities from Joe Schmidt's era. and that was the building of the team. And then he brought in people around him, a bit like Clive Woodward before. All these coaches, Wayne Smith, all these great All Black coaches, they've always had people in place to look after various aspects, and he's really positioned them well. Mike Catt is one of those guys. He brought him as attacking coach, and he was criticised for the first few matches, but Farrell never bagged him and stood by him, and it's paying dividends. So he's created an atmosphere we talked about. Players want to play for him.
Where would Mike Catt, what would he assess the attacking out of 10 since he joined, when he says we can do a lot better than this?
Well, from the first few games, probably a 4 or 5 out of 10, because I don't think people were buying into it at that stage. They were just trying to get wins, a bit like Borthwick is at the moment. You can't plan an attack when you just come in overnight. But I mean, now he'd have to be looking at an 8 or 9 out of 10. Yes, of course, it's like golf. You never have the perfect game, but the introduction of guys like Mac Hansen and Lowe and the back three, I mean, they're world class. You know, you've got
the two lads from the Southern Hemisphere. They bring a smile to the whole group as well, don't they? The two wings.
Well, especially James Lowe.
Yeah.
I used to think, was it his mouth guard or was it just? But like, you know, and the shaking of the hair and everything like that.
But they're also two lads you would just like to have a pint with, kind of thing.
But that's what I mean. I mean, you know, Hansen was watching the game. I think we all know the story in Australia a couple of years ago, and somebody said, why don't you try your luck with Connacht? He's just got that sort of playoff or whim sort of attitude about him, and you know, even the mic drop and the kind of the tash and the tattoo, whether he had a bet with somebody else to get a tattoo done for somebody in the teammate. But yeah, it's a refreshness in this team, and as I say, they're just enjoying playing rugby, and as long as you have that at the core of your value system, that you enjoy it first, you'll always be successful.
Why would Mike Catt say that as well, where he's like, we can do an awful lot better attacking?
Because there's always room for improvement. Yeah. Always room for improvement. You never have a perfect game. You never have a perfect season. So there's always stuff you can improve on, and that's what builds success. Really, like you can't rest in your laurels, because every other team is going to get better around you. So you need to get better as well. You know, so you have to say that. Like,
well, exactly. Oh, you've had the perfect game. Then you have nothing to improve.
It could be misconstrued as arrogance as well, when Ireland are the best team in the world at the moment. I think he genuinely believes we can improve a good bit more.
Well, absolutely.
Which is amazing.
If Michael Johnson, the great runner or something, turned around and said, "Okay, there's room for improvement. I want to get a world record," would he be regarded as arrogant? No, he'd be regarded as highly competitive and wanting to be the best he can be. That's all he's saying.
But if you ask any of the coaches, if you ask Paulie, can we improve the line-out? Absolutely can. We've lost 1 or 2 every game. Like,
Scrum can improve.
Can we improve the defence? Of course we can. We've missed tackles, but we're still the best team in the world. You know what I mean? So there's always loads of stuff to.
What's Paul O'Connell's influence been like?
Yeah, huge. Yeah, like
Any surprise at all at his success?
No, absolutely not. No, like, do you know what I mean? He did it when he was a player, and he's doing it now when he's a coach, and he just is instilled obviously an ethos around the line out, and we're just taking the easy ball, and we're getting the majority of them. Do you know what I mean? So and it's just a fantastic platform to play off, and I think he's done a
so
fantastic
much respect
job
too, hasn't he?
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, that's what we talked about Farrell. So much respect.
If you're like Ryan Baird and James Ryan and Kieran Treadwell.
He was their poster on the
Paul
wall.
O'Connell's coaching it, like, do you know what I mean? It's brilliant.
Would you have any concern about the physical repercussions of how tough that Scotland game was today?
No.
You were unbelievably confident.
I'm not unbelievably.
We're the best team in the world. Yeah, we beat New Zealand. Yeah, we were. Yeah, you were.
As I said, I'm not unbelievably confident, but I'm hesitant and wary as well. You know, but I think obviously we are going to win. There are obviously some injuries, but I think as Brent said, it's the depth that we've kind of built over the last while that will stand us.
What are your concerns today?
That England want to come out and raid on our parade and kind of if they're able to kind of physically dominate us like they have in the past. Like I think was it 2019?
You playing through? No, you were
2019. Yeah, I think I came off the bench, or I'm not really sure, but I remember Sinclair had a class game, and they just physically dominated us, and that's the difference. That's the difference. Yeah. So if they're able to come out and do that today, you never know, you know. So just wary, you know.
Kind of want to be in your box now for the match, but Katie, we've only a minute before the ads, and I can't wait for the second half of the show, because we'll get to the nuts and bolts of the game itself, and some memories of Ireland and England as well, going back to Michael Kiernan and so on. And great memories of Croke Park and Lansdowne Road. Briefly, what are your concerns today? Where could this possibly go wrong?
I think it's the same. It's just the physicality. I think the anger and the hurt from potentially last week, especially, I think they could really come out and rain on the day. But I also just can't see it happening at the same time. Physicality, if we can match their physicality, I think we'll be fine.
Yeah, it's all coming up. And just a live score as well. Scotland 19, Italy 6. There's about 20 minutes to go. They're a quarter of the game to go. So Scotland looking in control there. We'll be back after the ads. Loads more to come.
Off the ball. This is News Talk.
Yeah, Italy are making a game of it here. It's going to be back to a one-try game here with 14 minutes to go, and I think as much as we have, obviously, our Celtic cousins and so on and so forth, our great relationship with the Scots, and how much we have in common as national characters and all that, I think it'd be nice to see Italy make a go of this. What are your memories of Ireland v England? I think no game stirs the emotion like it, and possibly rugby does it better than football because it happens so often. Back in 1973, some of you listening in will remember the height of the Troubles. England lost 89 at Lansdowne Road, got an unbelievable reception because they showed up, and it was the captain John Pullen and his immortal words, we may not be very good, but at least we turn up. And did you turn up in the Legends game yesterday, Dev?
I turned up.
Yeah.
I don't know how well I played. Malcolm O'Kelly got man of the match.
A big Mal.
Yeah.
How did it go?
It went well. We lost. Most of the tries were like kick throughs or intercepts and stuff. So it was like there was a bit, some hits going in, but it was mostly jogging and a couple of drag tackles.
Brent obviously remembers the Moss Keane line. You're not familiar with the Moss Keane Bill Bowman, so Brent and I aren't really sure if it's true, but it always makes me laugh. So this was in the day, as it normally was, where England were heavy favourites against Ireland, and Bill Beaumont and Moss Keane are standing for the anthems, and Bill Beaumont says, "May the best team win, Moss," and he goes, "Geez, I hope not."
Another language used. I heard it was the referee said, "Hey guys, have a good game, may the best team win," and Moss turned around and said, "I F and hope not."
Okay.
Moss stories.
We'll get back to some memories, but first of all, Johnny Sexton, so it's his last Six Nations game. Talk to me about him and where he stands in the pantheon of not only Irish rugby greats but Irish sporting greats.
Jeez, where to start with him? Look, Johnny's been superb from probably day dot when he came in, and I think he's just grown into this leadership role as well, which has been great. He puts his body on the line. He expects so much from himself and others around him, which naturally just brings on a team, I think, as well. I think without him, we obviously probably have a couple of questions over who's going to take that jersey next. But
where are we on that in your regard?
I don't think we've cemented probably second 10 just yet. It's probably one of the only positions we probably haven't, to be fair, but it's really difficult when someone like Johnny Sexton is ahead of you as well, so we've a bit of work there to do. But I think even looking at the under-20s coming through, I think there are people there. We just have to make sure we nourish them and bring them forward with us. But yeah, what an unbelievable sports person. Like,
you know, the atmosphere at Lansdowne in the rugby game has been criticised and all of that, but I think it's notable in the Six Nations this year that people aren't necessarily going for a drink in the middle of the game, certainly in the France game. And you do feel today, with all that's going on, the Grand Slam, first time if it happens in Lansdowne Road, and the Johnny Sexton thing, this is going to be a special day to be there.
Yeah, it's going to be a massive weekend, or massive game. Like, the atmosphere, I think, will just be magic from as soon as you step into the stadium, never mind from the end whistle. But look, I think obviously, as you said, Patrick's weekend, England, I'd say half people are still going to be celebrating from yesterday, we'll call it.
I think you had different words over the break, actually.
I did, but we won't go there. Yeah, look, I think it'll be absolutely magic, and I think it'll be a game to remember. Absolutely.
We spoke about your school's rugby memories. What did you come across a young Johnny Sexton in those days?
Yeah, since we were in 4th and 5th fifth year. Yeah, always played together since school days. Always the same, always giving out, always telling you what to do, where to go. That's what's made him so good, though. I think.
Did you know of him before you played against him, if that makes sense? Or was there?
I knew of this class 10 in St Mary's.
Right.
Yeah,
what was the chat at that time?
Just that they have a class player in 10. Yeah, like just chit chat really. Like the same of that they were talking about. Oh, there's this freak playing for Castleknock College kind of thing. Like.
Who was that? Was that a term of endearment actually?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And after that, then, so you play against him, you play with him. How can you put him into words at this stage?
Do you know, it's hard. Like I think Peter Mahoney said it well during the week that he has made rugby better. He's made Irish rugby better, and obviously the rugby world is better for having him in it. And I think it's a testament to him of the amount of games he's played, the amount of Ireland games he's played, the amount of points that he scored, and just how the esteem that he's held in by everybody. And I just think he's been a phenomenal player, an ambassador for the game. So I can't say anything more about him, to be honest. Like I think everyone else has said it already.
Isn't it more as well that like an out half in say Popey's era was one thing, an out half in this era where the hits that he's taken and for his longevity and consistency as well at this stage of his life to still be the player that Ireland are almost like how do we replace this one player we still don't really know the answer at this stage of his career.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but again, any world class player is going to be hard to replace. You know what I mean? And then whoever does end up becoming the next heir to the throne, I suppose that we're going to obviously build the team around them, I suppose. But he's just done such a phenomenal job about shaping the shape that they play with and the attack. And I'm sure like he's worked with Joe, he's worked with Faz to shape their attack, and it's kind of grown with them as a team. And obviously he has the key to how it ticks, So I think it's whoever takes over after has to kind of shape it themselves as well.
Yeah, and that's the key thing, isn't it? Like, be yourself as well. Don't be like what would Johnny Sexton do.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What's he like as a character? Like in terms of, because you can't be that good without having something special about you in your head as well.
Something special about you? He's not special. Look, do you know he's a very personable guy. Like everyone gets on him. He loves to laugh and a joke. He can be a bit of a messer as well, slagging. But again, he's still quite intense when it comes to training, when it comes to his preparation, his everything else. But when it comes down to it, he's a good guy, good family guy, good friend. So he's just a top guy.
Where does he stand in the out halves that you've seen since you came to Ireland 30 years ago?
Well, he's, as Dev said, in American sports terminology, he's the quarterback.
Yeah.
He runs the whole show, and you need. He's probably saying he's a bit misunderstood personality-wise, but you need an abrasive guy that can run the cutter, as I used to say. You need an abrasive guy that's going to give out to other players around him and that. So that's not what he's like off the field, but he's just ultra competitive. Where he'll stand, if Ireland win a Grand Slam, he's going to... Well, he probably is now Ireland's most decorated player. If you look at World Player of the Year, if you look at the European Cups, if you look at the Grand Slam before, if they win another Grand Slam, he'll certainly be Ireland's most decorated player. And I would put it to other players, will he be Ireland's greatest ever player to date? And that's a debate. Because other people, obviously Brian O'Driscoll comes in that fold, Paul O'Connell maybe comes in that, Keith Wood. There's been a lot of marvellous players, not as decorated as him, because remember Brian O'Driscoll never actually won the World Player of the Year. Johnny Sexton has. I still think people would say that Brian O'Driscoll was the best in the world at his position, which was the centres, whereas Johnny Sexton's going to come up against Dan Carter, Johnny Wilkinson, those sort of players of his era. But certainly he will be one of Ireland's greatest ever sports people, not just rugby, one of Ireland's greatest ever sports people because of his achievements. And if they go on to win a World Cup, which they could, then yes, he may well turn out to be one of the greats, but he's certainly one of the greats of rugby.
There was that moment in the URC game against Connacht in the RDS. The game was effectively over, and he took this really heavy hit to the face, and you remember there was a big concern about him. I was just like, you're absolutely mad. Like, you're literally, Ireland have the biggest Six Nations campaign, possibly the biggest year of your career, for Ireland, and you're going into this tackle 60 minutes into a game you've won against Connacht in the RDS, endangering yourself, and that's obviously part of his genius.
Yeah, I think he just, like, I suppose that's what you love about him as well, isn't it? Like, he gives everything every time he steps onto that field. Super competitive, just wants and expects more every time. But then there's also that huge belief within himself, but also for the rest of that squad. And like, yeah, he's absolutely mad at times for sure, but I suppose I don't think he can control that at times.
He's had to battle a bit too, hasn't he?
Yeah,
he
absolutely.
Contemporaneous at Leinster, so he had to go off to France, then behind Rog, and all those sorts of things. So he's had to battle for his position. But just going back, you wouldn't want a player that's not going at it, because that's the way that he plays. And, we've all played at a level here where sometimes if you hold back, that's when you get injured. Yeah. So I fully expect him to be still going at it as hard, that he's not the type of player to step back and say, I don't want to get injured here, I've got the rest of the season. But because he's not that type of player. He's a player that meets the defence on the gain line. He loves to tackle. He loves to be abrasive in the clear out and all those things. That's part of his game,
Yeah. Like I want to just go back briefly to Andy Farrell as well. And I kind of compared it a bit to Jack Charlton earlier in that I think we have an affinity with people from the north of England, I think in Ireland, and Andy Farrell just seems to have brought this thing to the team where people want to play for him. He just seems like a nice guy. What would you say about him as well, for somebody who actually knows him and has dealt with him? Because as somebody who's never met him, I feel like I know him, if that makes sense.
Yeah. As you say, he's quite a nice guy. People like him, and he's bred this environment that people like to be in. They like to, and like, there's nothing better than being a team that's winning. And once you win, you want to win more. And obviously, it's a really good environment to be in when the feeling around it is so good. And he is just one of a number of coaches, obviously, who is facilitating that, and everyone gets on so well. And as we alluded to earlier on, he did really good things with bringing families in and getting family days and just really getting a good environment there for the players, and people enjoy it, And as I said, once you start winning, you want to do it more, and he has, as I said, bred that environment.
When you worked under him, has his success since surprised you at all? No.
Like, Joe built the foundation there, and Faz has just built on it. Do you know what I mean? And I think he's added his own little things to it as well, and along with Paulie and Mike and Simon. Do you know what I mean? They all have their little parts to play in it as well.
How important is that delegation then? When you spoke about Cheltenham and like Willie Mullins and Gordon Elliott are successful because they know that people working under them can ride the horses every day. How important is those guys you mentioned delegating responsibility to people you can trust within your team? That's
the whole thing, is it's about trust. Like, do you mean Faz is not going to say anything to Paulie about lineouts or Foggs about scrums or Caddy but I'm sure he has stuff to say to Caddy about attack and defence, but because he has his own philosophies there as well. But again, it's that trust in your trust in the coaches and trust in the team as well, that to do their own thing, so it's huge.
Your last game was in 2020. What's it like playing England?
Was it against England? I think it was.
Your last game was Andy Farrell's first runner in charge, so 2020. Obviously a part of you wants to be out there today, and I imagine maybe not after you had a good night last night, but what's it like playing England? Is it as special as it looks?
Yeah, it's the one fixture that you look at and you're like, okay, I can't wait for that. It's the build up to it, everything around it, the week leading up to it. Everyone knows that Ireland is huge, especially home games, Paddy's weekend. It's always, the hype around it is huge, and obviously there's all the history and everything leading up to it, and it's a huge fixture, and everyone just loves to be, and everyone wants to be involved in it. Yeah. Martin
Johnson's 2003, what happened then, I think nobody will ever forget that. That was brought up on the Independence Day, and he spoke, I think 5 years ago now, off the ball about what happened then, and he put maybe a nuanced kind of impression, but he did say, which really struck me, he was like when you remember Willie Anderson against the All Blacks, where he basically went up and squared up them, and Willie, like he said, like, the noise that day, I actually was shaking myself, and I didn't really realise what I was doing. But Martin Johnson did say, like, when they sang the Fields of Athenry subsequently, he was like, that's, I think, one of the only times in my life where the hair stood up in the back of my head. This is a special game.
Yeah, look, I think the crowd is going to be massive here today. Like, I think Ireland v England, no matter where it is, Twickenham or in the Aviva, I think it's a massive game. There's just, as you said, so much history involved. Any Irish person gets fully involved in it, and everyone hates the English, bar the English, really. So, I think
hate's a strong word, maybe.
Sorry, okay. But, likes to see the Blues.
We know where you're coming from. What's your favourite memory of Ireland v England? Actually,
I quite like the 2018 game in Twickenham. Snowed 24-15, I want to say, but just the way we played, full of confidence, I think that was probably one of my favourites.
It was one of the games. I think it could have been the start of either one of those years where it was snowed off. Ireland were due to play England, I think, in the first game, and I think it was Carr. He was the Ulster guy. He said Doyle put us through one of the toughest sessions ever. We went to O'Donoghue's for the day and the night, and it was a different era in those days.
Different era.
But you think of the Kiernan drop goal and what that meant to like Ireland's triple crowns in the 80s when the country was really struggling economically, and what it meant to the people then. And I just said this earlier, I would implore, if you're going to that game today, realise you are at a special moment here. A lot of people can't get tickets for this. Keep your phone, including you, Brent, which amazed me. How could you not get a ticket?
No, you talk about memories. For me, I was lucky enough to, I did the television coverage for about 25 years. So I was lucky enough to commentate on a lot of the English-Irish matches. The most special one for me was Croke Park. 2007, just because of the whole GAA history and stuff like that. I remember Conor O'Shea, who was on the pin at that stage, they invited him in the day before to talk about the history to the English camp, just so they understood the whole history of Croke Park. Just the respect, of all the spectators there from England and also from the North and also from the Republic, and that it was just this game that brought players to tears and emotional. Nothing to do about that, just to do with the background, let alone then Ireland going out and winning by 30 points or something on that particular day. It's still a record. And always remember Shane Horgan jumping up, GAA style and scoring a try. It was just the emotion around the whole history of this event that being brought to GAA and how respectful. People thought there was going to be trouble on the day. There was no trouble. So people stood and clapped for the anthems, and they were just so respectful. It was a day for me where sort of rugby transcended just the game. It was all about the emotion. So that was a special memory of those games. But, you're right. The crowd has a lot to play today. To get behind this team or something and make it a memorable exit for Johnny Sexton. So there's a whole lot in the Paddy's weekend and the Cheltenham people coming back flush with money.
I don't know about that, actually. not my mates, anyway. But absolutely,
the crowd have to play their part today to be that 16 man, because Ireland will need them at times in the game.
Absolutely, and I think as well, when you think about this, if it's our fourth most participated sport in this country, the fourth most participated sport, Katie, for us to be essentially better at the English at the moment, significantly better than their own sport, but that there is a real respect among English people for Irish rugby, what they've achieved. And as much as you mentioned hatred, and I get where you're coming from, there was 800 years and all of that, the history, the English people who come over today, there's a lot of respect, and it's a beautiful occasion today to be part of.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, hatred was probably a bit of a strong word, but I'll take it back. But I know where you're coming from. There is a massive respect there from both sides, to be fair. But I think that 16th man is going to be massive today. There's going to be times where England come hell for leather, as you said, like they're angry and they're hurt. And if that crowd can play a part in it, then absolutely we have to see that today.
What are your earliest memories actually of Ireland v England on the TV?
Not too many, to be honest with you. I don't remember 2007.
What?
I know.
I'm thinking of like Simon Gagan and all this.
I know.
I'm talking Ollie Campbell, like on black and white TV.
Yeah. Who's Ollie Campbell? No, I'm only messing. Joking. It would probably be around that 2007 time, but I don't remember the Croke Park game.
Yeah.
What about you, Dev?
I was at the Croke Park game in the crowd. I got a ticket.
Another
that was
ticket.
class from it. Yeah.
Well, a moment like that inspire you to think, geez, if I could do this someday, this would be pretty amazing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So I was in the academy at the time. So I was in the academy. So I came out of school in 04. So I was academy 06, and then I was on my first year development contract. So I think I got it through Leinster, the ticket or whatever. I was able to buy one. But I was in the crowd and just seeing it's an unbelievable.
With John Hayes.
Unbelievable occasion. Yeah, the ball crying. It's brilliant.
And you think as well, if Sexton were crying before the French game, what's it going to be like today? Like, you know, because and I don't know, like that stuff.
No, I think it was more emotional for that game for some reason, because that was the key game. That was always going to be the key game. You got
dangerous words. Yeah,
today's the key game as well. Today's the key game.
Today's a key. Look, we're all saying what everybody knows, that, you know, let's not get overly confident or overly cocky or anything like that, because the worst could happen, and we acknowledge that.
But the forwards against France and the second half against Scotland, I was like, this is a phenomenal rugby team. Like,
but they're phenomenal.
Yeah.
Here's the speak coming out of the camps, which is expected, that England are not talking about winning this game. They're talking about moving forward from the defeat. So that, in a sense, tells you something about where a successful game will be for them. In other years, it would have been, we're coming here to win at all costs, and we're here coming for our own Grand Slam, our own Triple Crown, or whatever it was at this stage. They are coming here to put down something and say, look, we've learnt from the defeat against France, and we've got to move the ship forward. The speak coming out of the Irish camp is, if not now, when? You know, we're top team in the world. We've beaten New Zealand away in their own backyard. We've beaten France at home in a tough match. We've beaten South Africa in this stage. If we can't win it now, you know, when do they win it? Because all the aces up the sleeve. Doris is back. Sheehan is back. You know, Johnny Sexton's back playing. Like, all the ingredients are there.
Well, actually, yeah, and on that, Dev, like, I mean, where's your
pride? They just have to win. And also the motivation. You know, Ireland might have been, over the years, might have been out of the competition. England might have been coming for a Triple Crown. Ireland might have been nothing better than to spoil the party over so many of those years. But look at the motivation for this Irish team, to give Johnny a send-out. That'll get an extra...
Yeah, so I'm wondering, is this a calm Irish dressing room beforehand, Dev, or is it like, you know, there's a lot of emotion going on here? I think the Sexton thing is huge. It's Ireland v England, it's history in the making, first ever Grand Slam at Lansdowne Road. Or are they like, lads, it's a rugby game, chill out, we win?
It'll be calm, it'll be nervous, there'll be a lot of nerves.
Good or a bad thing?
Good. Yeah, good nerves. I think the thing about having probably a quiet dressing room, I think obviously the nerves, and like it's good. Like there'll be no shouting or hooping and hollering, you know what I mean? Like kind of, but there'll be a little bit maybe before we go out, you know. So but the emotion will definitely be there. But I think once the ball's kicked off, the nerves are gone, and you'll be able to get into the game then.
Scotland have overcome Italy. I'll get you the scoreline. I think they won quite comfortably in the end.
Would a worry? Well, obviously it's a worry, but just throw it to the panellists. Would a worry be, the worst thing that I could see happening would be Johnny got injured in the first few minutes of that match, and because you lose a bit with Gary Ringrose leadership not there. I know Robbie's coming back, but he hasn't had much rugby. He just concentrated on his own game. That would be my worry.
Okay, very, very briefly on that, Dev, in a few words. I wouldn't be worried at all, actually, what happens with that.
My worry would be if there's like a red card or something.
Yeah.
If there's a high tackle.
I mean, it wouldn't be a worry at all if Johnny goes off.
I think the belief this team has, I think today they're 1 to 10 favourites. They're 15-point favourites.
So you lose.
Not today.
I would have a lot of faith in Ross Byrne coming off.
Absolutely. Yeah, I wouldn't.
But to say it wouldn't be a worry.
It wouldn't. I'm more confident than you, and I obviously don't know about rugby. Katie, is this a worry? Very briefly.
No.
Absolutely. Listen to Katie. And listen to Dev if you're in. What box are you in today?
438.
438.
Why has it been a worry for so many people going to the World Cup without Johnny Sexton?
Not
and yet
today,
it doesn't
though.
matter today.
Not today.
With a whole
Ireland,
team,
they're just
of course, Ross Byrne stepped up the plate. What I'm saying is that any team loses a world-class player in the first 10 minutes, that is their captain and their player that guides them around the pitch. And to say it's not a worry.
Well, Rory O'Connor puts in the Irish Independence today, they're playing a bad team, playing poorly. That's who England are at the moment.
I take all that.
If that's the case, I'm with Dev. If they were knocked down to 14 men, that's definitely a worry. 15 men, Ireland just win today.
why then that should be the worry based on what Ireland have done with 14 men this season?
I would.
Or what
Well,
they did in
14 against
Scotland.
15 for 77 minutes
But then-
would be difficult.
yeah.
Yeah. Brent is actually coming back. I'm going to get a selfie with Brent before we fall out.
You wouldn't win an
I was trying to get you a
argument
ticket
at
a few minutes ago. This week's Saturday panel is brought to you with thanks to Carry Out, Ireland's largest independent off licence with over 100 stores nationwide and voted Ireland's #1 off licence in 2022, now delivering nationwide. Visit carryout.ie for more. Brent Pope is going to stay with us and watch the game.
may not want me back,
Turned up
fine.
2 minutes late as well, which I mean, okay, we have time to ask you for your predictions, starting with you, Katie.
I want to say Ireland by 13.
Dev.
Yeah, I was going to say like 26-10 or 26-12 maybe. Ireland.
And a good night. Yeah. And a good night for all.
And a good night for all.
Yeah.
Grand Slam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These are the days you got to celebrate. Thanks a million for coming in, guys.
Thanks.